Open world games love to shout about freedom, do anything, go anywhere, be anyone. But the reason Grand Theft Auto changed the genre wasn't a slogan, it was a craft. Rockstar didn't just build bigger sandboxes, it taught your hands a language. Roads became sentences, cameras became punctuation, sirens, tires squeal, and the funk of a fender kissing a guardrail turned into grammar. The miracle is that you learn it without noticing. One night you're a tourist who oversteers into a hydrant. A week later you hear a distant cop, feel the rear end go light on rain-slick asphalt, dip the brake, and slip into an alley you didn't know you knew. That is GT Create Secret. The game teaches you to improvise, and the world answers in complete sentences. It starts with the car, because in GTA the car is everything. Not as a collectible or a status symbol, though it's that too, but as an interface, your primary verb. The handling model moves across eras like a DJ tuning a mix, at first. More arcade brightness than the heavy, inertia-soaked honesty of a world that punishes bravado, and later a balance that lets speed feel cinematic without lying. Weight matters. Grip matters. You learn which bodies want straight lines and which want hairpins, which engines will agree to climb that dirt slope, and which are basically asking for a funeral. Rain isn't weather. It's a teacher. Dirt isn't color. It's a warning. A crumpled hood is not set dressing. It's a new plan. The game tells the truth through the wheel, and because the car speaks plainly, you can be bold without being blind. That clarity survives because the camera refuses to betray you. That camera steals attention. GTA's camera gives it back. In a chase, it settles where your eyes would prefer to be, horizon steady, the next lane legible. When you bounce off a bus or clip a mailbox, it recenters without drama, as if to say, you're busy, I've got the framing. Even the theatrical angles, those sudden swoops, into cinema work not as vanity but as a proof of continuity. The world streams beneath you without seams, a stage you can trust. And when the series lets you slip into first person, it's not a party trick so much as an audit. The streets hold up, the signage reads, the soundscape still makes sense. The point is confidence. You never need to fight the viewpoint to fight the city. Physics turn confidence into consequence. A stumble is not a canned animation, but a negotiation between weight, momentum, and mistake. A tumble downstairs hurts in a way your palms understand. Bodies in metal move as if they have opinions, and soon you plan with those opinions in mind. That fence will give. That pillar will not. This sedan will settle if you feather the throttle. That box truck will pitch you into a slide you can't catch. You stop thinking realism and start thinking predictability, which is what you actually need to improvise under pressure. GTA doesn't fetishize physics. It harnesses them so the world keeps its promises. Then there's the hum in the corner of your vision, those stars that bloom when you break the peace. The wanted system is one of the cleanest loops in the medium, compressing an entire stealth and pursuit simulation into a heartbeat of information. Make noise and the world grows teeth. The more you insist, the sharper they get. But escape isn't only speed. It's silence, a dance of sightlines and misdirection. You learn to vanish, to sever the thread of a chase by breaking a cop's gaze, changing your silhouette, idling in the shadow of a truck while the search radius breathes itself out. 2 stars in a tight grid feel suffocating. The same 2 on an open coast feel theatrical. And you begin to sense how place changes pressure without a single rule needing to change. You don't need a manual. The system educates by hunting you. Missions work because they know where they live. Instead of dragging you into bespoke rides where the world stops being itself, GTA builds little sandboxes inside the larger one and lets the city keep its accent. A job rarely asks you to do only one thing. There's the approach you half memorized from a delivery run you didn't realize was rehearsal. There's the entry you picture in your head while a call chews your ear. There as the room that refuses to cooperate until you figure out which piece of cover was placed for faith and which for fools. Then there's the escape, which is the real essay. Your arc unwinds back through streets you chose, with a plan that never survives contact and a route that does because you know it. When you fail, you don't lose the night. You return to the moment that beat you and learn the one skill you were missing. Slowly, harshness gives way to respect. Checkpoints become kindness without becoming permission. Gunplay learned its own honesty over the years. Snap to cover that reads cleanly means you spend less time wrestling a corner and more time deciding when to leave it. Aim assists aren't apologies. They are invitations, the kind that let different hands share the same fantasy without idiosyncratic finger gymnastics. The weapon wheel turns what used to be a menu tax into a gesture, and suddenly a firefight is choreography instead of admin.
The game's philosophy holds. Make the right thing easy enough that the hard part can be timing, judgment, and nerve. Even the interface stays out of your way. The mini-map speaks in a vocabulary the eye can parse at a glance, not a blizzard of icons that require a legend. GPS reroutes without drama so you can keep your eyes where they belong, on lanes and light. Instructions come as phone calls and texts, not proclamations from a quest log. And the tiny act of answering a friend becomes a thread in the fiction. You aren't checking a checklist, you're hearing a voice. A thin layer of UI does the job because the world itself carries so much of the telling. Underneath all this is pacing, the invisible conductor you only notice when it's missing. The campaign alternates fever and coolness with a sense of when you need a breath. An absurd set piece wins because the quiet mission that preceded it didn't try to compete. A long drive is not filler, it's therapy, time for a song to carry a mood from one choice to the next. The series knows better than to keep turning every dial to the right. By letting some beats be modest, it lets the large ones feel large. Money moves through the game with similar purpose. The purchases you make aren't numbers, they are verbs. A garage doesn't just display pride, it shortens the distance between you and experiments you've been postponing. A property is an anchor for rituals that begin to define your version of the city. The expensive toy isn't just louder. It rewrites your roots, creating new problems only the toy can solve. Side work, races, odd jobs, stunt runs, doubles as tutoring. You think you're killing time. The game is building muscle memory. All this rides on tech that rarely takes a bow. Streaming keeps the seams hidden so a plan can be one continuous line instead of a checklist broken by loading screens. Level of detail discipline lets the world stay readable at 100 miles an hour. After chaos, the systems recover quickly. Cops relent, traffic rebuilds, pedestrians return to their errands. It isn't true persistence, but it feels like a place that endures you, which is the feeling that matters. The stage holds, so improv can keep being improv. The heist is where the design philosophy stands in front of a mirror and smiles back. Planning becomes a toy you can move with your hands. You pick a style and the world nods. Loud if you insist, quiet if you have the patience. And the choice attaches to consequences that feel personal rather than punitive. Crew selection turns numbers into story beats and competence into breathing room. Setups aren't chores. They're reconnaissance, practice runs that seed the finale with recognition. The board is more than cork and string. It's a way to see your brain on the wall, a fiction-friendly UI that turns a flowchart into swagger. When it works, a heist isn't a level that replaces the open world. It's the moment the open world admits it was always the level. Failure holds its own tone. Wasted and busted became jokes because the sting is tempered by pace. You're back quickly, pointed at the lesson you need, not forced into a commute of shame. The fiction embraces your collapse as part of its personality, and that too lowers your blood pressure. When a game respects your time, You repay it with the courage to try the thing that might not work. Crowds, cars, and cops make the city feel alive without needing to be geniuses. Traffic is predictable enough to plan around and chaotic enough to surprise, which is exactly the ratio that keeps you awake. Pedestrians chatter and flinch and scatter in ways that redraw space. Soft barriers that change a perfect line into a moral question. Do you thread the needle, or do you lift? Police tactics scale in tears you can feel before you see them. You don't memorize spreadsheets, you accumulate instincts. Together, these routines simulate reality, so much as they produce a credible stage, one that believes in its own rules and refuses to humiliate you for believing too. Sound is the tutor you don't see. A siren tells you where not to look. A tire squeal gives you a beat to fix your mistake before your eyes would have. The thunk of a bullet snapping past cover tells you to move without a UI flashing red. Mix matters because your brain trusts ears more quickly than it trusts numbers. GTA leans on that, and as a result, the world speaks in ways that make you better just by listening. The phone glues it all together without breaking the spell. It delivers work as conversation, not assignment, and tone as much as direction. A photo to snap here, a lead to trace there. Light puzzles that entertain your curiosity without switching genres on you. The world walks with you between missions, living in your pocket, gossiping, reminding, nagging in voices that sound like people instead of menus. It's a mission log dressed in street clothes. Even distractions are complicit in the education. A race at sunset whispers breaking points and lines without calling it a class. A shooting gallery turns your fussy habits into stable ones. A string of collectibles, when they're designed with respect, becomes a tour of the designer's intentions.
A lesson in how space is open if you arrive at the right angle, and how jumps are more composition than courage. By the time you care about 100%, you're already fluent, and then the city wakes up in public. GTA Online takes the same grammar and layers time on top. Suddenly the map is not only space but schedule. Incentives move like weather, and a quiet overpass turns into a parade because this week it matters. Heists become team sports where roles harden into identities. I drive isn't just a boast, it's a contribution. Plans become dialects among friends, and failure starts writing folklore you'll retell for years. When the economy tilts too far toward grind, the fix, as always, is a drive, a lane, a song, a hill that forgives and then challenges again. The core loop survives turbulence because driving together is its own reward. An audience as wide as GTS demands, an on-ramp as wide as a boulevard. The series learned to make difficulty a matter of tools rather than health sponges. Aim helps that don't insult, roads that read like roads, landmarks that orient without begging for attention. These aren't compromises, they're hospitality. Generous checkpoints are not mercy. They are an investment in your willingness to keep taking interesting risks. Accessibility here isn't a buzzword. It's the business logic of a game that wants to be public space. You can see the fingerprints of this approach all over the industry. Heist missions with flowcharts, world streaming that hides the seams, phones that deliver quests as text, discrete wanted-style heat systems, weapon wheels that humanize chaos. But copying features is not the same as copying philosophy. GTA works because the parts agree with each other. The physics tell the same story the camera tells, which tells the same story the UI tells, which tells the same story the pacing tells. All of it points to the fantasy of crime as competence, escape as choreography, improvisation as earned. When other games feel like checklists, it's often because their systems point in different directions. They're louder, but not clearer. What then? Does the grammar suggest about where GTA can go? Next, not by guessing, but by listening to what the design already values. Imagine a chase that is less about outrunning and more about outseeing. The grid of a downtown canyon, with its glass and shadows and tight turns, becomes a playground where line of sight can be bent, severed, and faked. You deck into a garage not only to change paint, but to change silhouette. You roll out in a different body and become a rumor instead of a target. A phone to your ear, a hoodie zipped, an idol at a light small behaviors that bleed heat without turning the game into a stealth sim with shrubbery. The system stays legible. The icons don't multiply. The conversation with the city gets deeper. Water and height could mean more than new vehicles. Not boats exist, but tides matter. Canals that act like secret arteries. Drawbridges and ferries that turn timing into design instead of inconvenience. Rooftops that behave like honest highways with their own ambushes and escape grammar. Helicopters that aren't fireworks but patrols with personalities you can read and subvert. The point wouldn't be complexity for its own sake. It would be to give more spaces their own verbs, so your planning board begins to look like a map of rhythms rather than just roots. Sound might grow teeth as well. Engines that tell on you because you refuse to change the exhaust. Tires that sing a little too loudly when you hurry through a sleepy block. Cops who triangulate your noise footprint unless you decide, for today, to be the kind of driver who floats. Suddenly, a silent shot isn't a cliche. It's an agreement with the street. Suddenly, a sports car is the wrong decision, not because of stats, but because it means you can be heard 3 corners away. If GTA is already a conversation, teaching noise to speak makes the talk richer. Crowds could remember, briefly not as morality meters or reputations that shackle you for hours, but as neighborhood moods that linger long enough to make you think twice.
10 minutes after a messy escape, a block still hums with alertness. Shop doors feel unfriendly. A cruiser crawls by out of habit. Slip in soft, blend a little. Let the place forgive. Nothing to grind, no meters to fill. Just a window of civic memory that makes the city feel alive without turning it into a ledger. Preparation could move further into the world. Casing stops being a cutscene and turns into a walk with a camera, a notebook drawn over the screen. Your own scribbles over vents and guard paths that later become the lines you drive. The best part wouldn't be the feature itself. It would be the feeling of having authored your plan, ink on asphalt, confidence earned in daylight that pays off in night. Even failure could be yours in a new way. Instead of a single checkpoint generosity, imagine a handful of self-declared stakes, moments you choose as this is where it started to matter, a car swap you marked as your pivot, a regroup spot you named because you knew you'd need it. When the mission collapses, the game lets you respect your own structure. Mastery stops being in someone else, as invisible cut points, and starts being in the architecture you drew yourself. None of that requires abandoning the soul of the series. It's the opposite, doubling down on clarity so improvisation can get wilder, on communication so chaos can be smarter. The route guidance still whispers instead of screams. The camera still tells the truth. The physics still keep their promises. The UI still pretends it isn't there. And the city still, always, answers. Ask 10 players their favorite GTA memory, and you all get 10 stories that sound like they were printed on the disc. A truck slid across 2 lanes at the exact second a chopper lost sight under a ramp. A freeway became a vein of luck that pulsed at the right tempo. A last-second dive into a parking structure turned a 5-star nightmare into a parked car, sitting very still, with the radio turned down and laughter breaking the tension. None of it was scripted. All of it was authored, by a grammar so tight that improvisation looks like magic. That is the lesson GTA taught open worlds. Freedom isn't an ocean. Freedom, it's jazz. You don't need every note. You need the right scale, the right timing, the right bandmates, the right room. You need rules that get out of the way when you are good and get in front of you when you about to embarrass yourself. You need a world that forgives fast and remembers just long enough to make you better. You need systems that keep their stories straight, so your story can be messy. So the next time a trailer swears it's like GTA, don't count icons. Listen for the conversation. Do the roads tell you what they want without shouting? Does the camera let you think about the plan instead of the lens? Does a siren make your hands move differently before your eyes do? When you mess up, do you feel taught rather than scolded? If the answer is yes, then you're not just in a sandbox. You're in a city that speaks, and you've learned how to talk back.